Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Indo Daily. Today we're going to look through Budget 2024 to ask what it means for you and, most importantly, your pocket. I'm Kevin Doyle, and on the couch I'm joined by Sinéad Ryan and Charlie Weston. Sinéad Ryan, who are the big winners in Budget 2024?
Well, Kevin, the big winners definitely, without question, are low-paid families with children. They've got a huge range of lump sums, increases in welfare rates and tax reliefs.
Okay, we'll go through all of those in a minute, but Charlie, the losers, there has to be someone who misses out.
Well, there aren't huge numbers of losers because there seems to be lots of goodies sprinkled about, but smokers have lost. They have seen a 75-cent increase in the packet 20 cigarettes, which is brings up packet 20 nearly to €17. It's a lot of money. And obviously people who smoke can't just decide to switch off and stop smoking tomorrow because it's got an awful lot more expensive. So yeah, they're the big losers, smokers.
They've been ticking away at that 50 cent a year, but he went 75 this year. Was that a sign that this is just a tax they can put up and there's no backlash?
It doesn't seem to be any backlash on that one. People who don't smoke are kind of very, couldn't care less about it, and are kind of, oh, if you smoke, so what? You have to pay for that. You're going to have medical problems. But yeah, it's usually 50 cents, so 75 cents was a lot this year. And it's a tough one for those people to have to absorb. It's going to make it a lot more expensive if you're buying 20 every day.
And in a budget where they're throwing around billions, does it actually bring in much money for the government to put up those taxes on cigarettes every time?
Not really, no. I suppose you have to put up some taxes. I mean, and there was a few small increases, like the banks probably got away lightly, but that's their bank levy has gone to €200. It was about 87 last year. That will raise a little bit more. Carbon tax goes up. That goes up every year. So the tax raising measures, not an awful lot of them. But the exchequer funding, even though corporation tax is behind target, the exchequer returns are still pretty healthy every month at the moment.
Okay, Sinead, let's start with those families that you mentioned are the winners. What are they getting?
Well, I counted no fewer than 12 separate benefits that, at least, that families, ordinary families, can claim out of this budget. In terms of the household, well, of course, we saw the electricity credit. That's coming to everybody. So we thought it might be about 400, but in fact, it's going to be given in 3 tranches of 150. So that's 450 between now and April. It'll work in exactly the same way as before. It'll be dropped into your electricity bill. You don't need to do anything for that. The mortgage tax credit. Now, this is a very convoluted one. Charlie and I were trying to do the maths on it earlier. But essentially, it's a 1-year, once-off measure for anybody who's been paying increased mortgage interest rates since the increases started from the ECB last summer. So you're going to have to calculate the increased interest you're paying, and then 20% is applied to that. So for somebody who's paid, let's say, €2,000 in extra interest over the last 12 months, they'll get €400 back, but they're going to have to claim it through their tax return. And that's something that a lot of families don't do at the moment if they're PAYE, so it'll be an extra burden to get hold of that.
An extra burden, but a bit of cash at the end.
A bit of cash at the end. There's a reward for always filling out your tax return. So there's lots and lots of benefits. And actually, one of the measures announced was an education process for everybody to teach them how to claim their tax credit. So that'll save Charlie and I a job over the next while. The home carer tax credit. Now, this is the one that applies to child benefits. So this is for stay-at-home parents. That's going up by €100 to €1,800. The breadwinner gets it, and not enough people claim that, in my view. There is going to be the fee waiver again for state exams, so junior leaving cert, and free books for the junior cert cycle. Now, this is a huge benefit. I was talking to somebody in Bernardo's about this. They're delighted to finally see this as a progression because we know how much those books cost at that level. And while we're on the subject of books, all audio books and e-books are now going to be VAT free. So that'll be great for all the book club people out there. Child benefit is extended to age 18 as long as the child is in second level education, and there's going to be a double payment of that before Christmas. Creche fees are going to go down another 25%, but not until next September. Free school meals extended to 900 new primary schools. I know that's a hugely popular measure amongst lower income families, and I think that's a really good thing. Parents are going to be able to claim the rent tax credit, which is being moved from 500 to 750 euros for their kids who are in digs.
Yeah, explain this one to me. So this
So-
is the rent credit that was brought in last year at 500 euro. This is when rents were reaching all-time records.
Yeah.
And you could get a 500 euro tax credit. It's been claimed by relatively small numbers.
About
which suggests
half
there's
the
a problem in
people.
the system.
Yeah, about half the people who are entitled to claim it as by all accounts. Now that could be down to the fact that A, people don't like form filling generally, but secondly, their landlord has to be registered with the Residential Tenancies Board, and we know still by this evidence and figures from the CSO that actually there's a huge swathe of landlords not
It
registered.
suggests there's a big black market out there.
Huge, and I think bigger than anyone would have thought.
But explain, so how do I, if I have a kid in college, is that the idea?
Yeah, so,
I can-
so up to now, you had to claim it for yourself as a payor. But if you've a college kid in digs or under the rent room scheme staying in a different town, they couldn't claim it because they're not taxpayers, so they can't get a tax relief. But now the parents are going to be allowed to claim it. So hopefully that'll encourage people. And it's now 750 euros. But even better news, they can back claim last year's 500 as well.
That's a nice little trick, Charlie, isn't it? The flip side of that one, we'll keep going on the family measures in a second, but Charlie, the flip side of that one was Pierce Doherty stood up straight after the two finance ministers and said this was a budget for landlords.
Well, yeah, he's given some incentives as well, Minister McGrath, for landlords to get them to stay in the market. There's a perception out there that landlords are getting out of the market because property prices are high. There's rent pressure zones restricting the amount of rent increases they can put through. They argue about excessive regulations, they say. And, if they have a problem with a tenant, it's very difficult to rectify the situation. That's what they say. So they tend to sell up. So he's giving extra tax credits to landlords to keep them in the market. The longer they stay in the market, the higher the tax credit will be. It's a little incentive just to get them to kind of stay renting a property. This is aimed really at the small, what the Americans call these mom and pop.
Pops.
It's an awful phrase, but yeah, the small.
What is
people
it
who
worth
own
to them,
maybe
Charlie? It's only a few thousand.
It's €1,000 the first year, and gradually goes up to about 3 or something like that.
3,000 for next year, and then I think it's 4,000, 5,000 and 5,000. But if they sell the house in the coming 4 years, the whole lot gets clawed back. So, I'm not sure though, Charlie, that actually this targets where it should, because there's no evidence that all these people, like that, the couple of grand they're going to get, is actually going to hang on to them in the market. I'm not convinced.
It is a bit of it. It's a try on here. It's a bit like the vacant homes tax. Will it do anything? Will it incentivize people to take empty homes out there and put them on the market? They've increased the vacant homes tax. It's going to be 5 times the local property tax now. These are measures just to try and...
They're nudge-onomics, really.
Yeah, nudge-onomics. It's just a nudge behaviour, I suppose.
So anything else for families quickly, Sinead, before we
so students,
jump on?
the university fees reduction of 1,000. Again, they've increased the maintenance rates. Now, these are the grants paid by Susie for people who live 30 kilometres away from the homes. They've increased the bands at which they become payable, and they've increased the income threshold that families can apply for them under. And then for families, children's benefit, so they'll get a double payment. And then for the working family, so those on low incomes who receive the working family payment, they will get an extra €400 lump sum before Christmas.
What about working people then, Charlie?
Yeah, there's a few changes on the income tax side. For example, normally a single person pays tax at the higher 40% income tax rate as soon as they go over 40,000. That is going to 42,000. So you get to pay 20% of on the first 42,000 instead of the first 40,000. Now that will make a considerable difference. There's also some increases in the personal credits and the PRSI credit. So a PAYE worker would have 2 credits. These are amounts of money you can earn before you pay tax. So the personal credit's going up by €100 and the PRSI credit has gone up by €100 as well. For the self-employed, the earned income credit is going up by €100 as well. And then there's some changes to the USC, the Universal Social Charge, that charge we hate.
The much hated
rescue
USC,
of the economy after the banks crashed it. The middle rate there is going from 4.5% to 4%. Excuse me. And he's made some changes to the 2% rate as well. The threshold changes there, which means you get to pay that lower rate at a bigger, more your money goes on that.
That's to kind of take effect. That comes in at the lowest rate, and that's to kind of measure in the rise in the minimum wage.
The minimum wage is going up by 140 as well, up to 1270. So, you know, the interesting tax changes there. You know, there's some other little changes in you know, in the incapacitated child tax credit as well. So you look at, you're talking about somebody maybe on an average wage gaining about €800 there maybe.
Will people feel that, Charlie, or will that just be eaten up by the stuff you're writing about in the Irish Independent every day in terms of just day-to-day costs going up?
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that. I mean, costs have gone up so much and are going up so much, even though inflation has come down. It's still racing away at a fair old rate at the moment.
Actually, can I ask you about that? Because the ministers mentioned multiple times today about this idea that last year was the cost, it was billed as the cost of living budget. It was when prices were running away. And they mentioned several times today that inflation is coming down. But that's not deflation. Inflation coming down just means costs are rising at a slower pace than they were this time last year when they ran away.
They're still rising, but they're just not rising as quickly and as, you know, as dramatically as they were. So yeah, so people are still under this pressure, you know, and energy bills are still high. You know, everything you buy is gone up, and you know, businesses can use the inflation scenario as a cloak to kind of push up prices on anything, you know. So, but look, I suppose combined with the income tax changes, combined with the €450 in credits on energy bills, and the fact that energy bills are coming down a little bit, maybe €200 to €300, all of that will help. It certainly will help, you know. It won't make any dramatic difference to household budgets. I think a lot of household budgets will still be under pressure, but these things will certainly ease it a little bit. You know, and you know, different households are going to be impacted in different ways. You know, as parents, as Sinead says, are some of the big winners. But you know, there are bits and pieces here that will help people, certainly.
Sinead, I think, and I'm going back to my days as a political journalist here, but to me it was a political budget because we talked about a lot of things that are in there for workers and parents. Young people might feel that there's some things in there, but not a huge amount really. You know, there is the increase to the college grants, there's a reduction in the college fees, there's a little bit extra on the rent credit, and cheaper transport. But they might be looking at what older people are getting and kind of going, it's only scratching the surface for us. And is that a sign maybe that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil know they've lost the young vote anyway?
Listen, it's hard to know. I mean, the housing is the single biggest issue for young people at the moment. And I'm talking about people, when I say young people, in their early 20s. You know, right up at the moment, we're looking at up to their late 20s, okay? So some of the tax measures will definitely benefit them, okay, directly, if they're working. And that'll be a big deal. If they're still students, yes, there's something in there for them up to age 25 or thereabouts. But actually, I thought it was disappointing. There was hardly anything mentioned about the biggest issue, which is housing. Now, that has all been outsourced and devolved now to the Land Development Agency and the Housing Agency and all of that. But
the government would say that their Housing for All plan is their budget, multi-billion euro budget for housing.
Thousands of houses being built. But and look, no budget is going to be able to say, you know, there's going to be 50,000 houses coming on stream by the end of the year. It's never going to happen. But they will be disappointed by the fact that, for instance, the only measure that was specifically mentioned was the Help to Buy scheme. This is the tax rebate that you get for 4 years for first-time buyers. They were supposed to extend that to second-hand houses. Didn't hear anything on that. They've just said we're extending it for another year or to the end of 2025. You know, and it just seems unambitious, actually, and if the housing measures take off, and look, it's going to be years before we see the promises that were made 2 years ago come through. You know, we know it's about 2 years from planning to shovels in the ground. That's too long, and it's not enough. So I think any young people won't be getting a warm, fuzzy feeling out of this budget.
At the other end of the spectrum, Charlie, the grey vote is one that Fianna Fáil, I think in particular, always valued. What's in this budget for those, I guess, in their 60s, 70s, 80s?
I suppose the big thing, Kevin, is that they got €12 in the pension. You know, the social welfare payments are going up by €12. The problem with the government leaking so much, and the reason they leak is to get it out there and have that good news repeated day over day after day on all the broadcast media and in the newspapers. And, you know, so the good news...
You're not against leaks now, Charlie, I hope.
Not against leaks, but it works against the government in a sense that then it is €12. There's no surprise. People are going, oh, I was hoping it might be more. He was hoping the leaks might be on the low side.
Anticlimax.
It's anticlimax, and people will go, it's only €12. That isn't going to go far with the increased electricity bills I have and the increased food bills. So, they kind of stored up trouble for themselves by making it, too clear what that figure was going to be. And there have been calls for much more than that. National Women's Council, Social Justice Ireland would have called for €25 increase, which was never going to happen. There was going to be as much as that. So, €12, it's not really going to excite anybody, I think,
It's also not going to beat inflation. It's 4% extra on the pension, and it's about 5.7% extra for people on unemployment benefit. So with inflation still over 5%, that's not a big win for them.
It's eaten up straight away. On that one, Charlie, we mentioned cigarettes, obviously, the one of the old reliables. Nothing on booze this year. And the excise, you've been writing recently that petrol and diesel is heading back towards €2 a litre. They're kind of putting off that excise duty. It's not a hike because it was a reduction and it was supposed to go back up. Isn't that right? They put that off now.
They had temporarily reduced the excise duty on petrol and diesel last year when oil prices went very, very high, and there was a risk of we were hitting €2 a litre, and they had gradually restored that. There was 2 restorations of that higher excise duty. There was another one due at the end of this month. They've held back on pushing that one through. It would have added about 8 cents to the litre of petrol and about 5 cents to diesel. They've decided to push that off until next year, and they're going to do it in phases between April and August. So they'll do it in tiny little incremental amounts that you probably won't feel so much.
So less of a backlash in the moment.
The problem was 2 things coming against us at the moment. The oil market is just very volatile with all the geopolitical issues, and particularly the Saudis and the Russians restricting supply, and the fact that we buy it in dollars. So it means that we're having to shell out. The euro is weak against the dollar. We're having to shell out more just in currency terms. So, it would have been a very unpopular move to have announced.
There will be a small hike, though, won't there?
There will be a small hike. Carbon tax, and that one has to run through under legislation. There's a carbon tax increase every budget. So from midnight tonight, there will be a small increase in diesel and petrol due to carbon tax. It's about 2 cents. And then on the other fuels, gas, not electricity, gas, logs, briquettes, those kind of things, and coal, that'll come through usually in May. That's a carbon tax increase on those. So you can't get away from that carbon tax. Yeah, that it's not popular, but that's going through. Yeah.
Sinead, I was struck by what wasn't mentioned in the budget, RTE.
There was no reference to them at all, except maybe what you were watching it on. No reference. And there was a suggestion that RTE needs a bailout now, somewhere between 53 and 57 million, which we were told had been more or less agreed. It should have been in the budget, really. It should have got a line.
What the Minister has said, and I think there is no press conference from the Culture Minister, the Arts Minister, Media Minister today. She had indicated she'd probably give around 15, 16 million, and she was going to hold off on the rest of it until we see RTE's big plan. But it's kind of astonishing that the ministers could stand up and not even acknowledge what has been the biggest controversy, if you like, both political and just among the general public in recent months.
The books have to be balanced. If they've raised the revenue and they're giving it out, you have to have that line in somewhere. But it just didn't seem worthy of mention in the Dáil today.
Charlie, anything on the black hole that is health?
Nothing much that I heard of there on that one. Usually you do get some changes that benefit families, but there are a lot of changes coming there anyway with free GP cards and they're constantly increasing the access to the free GP cards, which is suits people who can qualify on income grounds for that, but everybody else has ended up paying €80 to go to see a GP, which is expensive. And
if you can get one.
If you can get one, that's the problem. But and then you shell out for a prescription as well. So, there used to be a tax credit of 40% for your medical expenses. That's about 20% since 2009. It would have been good to see that go back up to 40% because it's a big expenditure for families. Health insurance has gone up twice this year for everybody as well. So, health in some families is a big expenditure, so there wasn't much there on that one.
And they also didn't reduce, as they've been doing in budgets up to now, the drug payment scheme allowance. It's still at 80, and normally that has been coming down by a tenner a month. These are for people who are on medications for chronic conditions. That wasn't mentioned at all.
No, I didn't hear any mention of that now, unless it's in some of the detail we've yet to get. But A huge expenditure for families who'll find when they go to renew their health insurance, if they have health insurance, and half the population have it, that it's going to be much more expensive to renew on the same plan. So people need to watch that one.
It strikes me, you mentioned 2009, Charlie, and the cuts that were happening back then. Michael McGrath, the Fianna Fáil finance minister, tweeted a picture, or X'd a picture of himself before the budget beside a picture which is in the Whitaker room, I think, in the Department of Finance, if memory serves me right, of Brian Lenihan, the last Fianna Fáil minister, to introduce a budget when we were talking about things like cutting child benefit and cutting pension payments and all the rest. How do you think Michael McGrath did in his first outing?
I think pretty good. I mean, he was in a very different position to Brian Lenihan. Brian Lenihan had to balance the books and introduce savage reductions, and 2 budgets in one of the years as well. Whereas McGrath was able to give away 13 billion euros. I mean, what a very different position for, and what a contrast between this current Fianna Fáil Minister for Finance and the previous one. Very different scenario.
Will it win them back any voters, Sinead?
It's time will tell whether it'll be 2024. Certainly the local elections to look forward to, and 2025 for a general at most. I was struck when I saw that photograph of Michael McGrath behind, with Brian Lenihan's picture behind him, of Brian Lenihan's some of his final words. When he was asked about what regrets he had, and he said that his biggest regret would not be seeing his country recover. And I think the country has recovered and is doing better than he might have hoped. And that's, I suppose, a good legacy for him, and maybe Michael McGrath's taking something from that.
Sinead Ryan, Charlie Weston, thank you very much.